Welcome to today's RD2RD Live Show, Designing Handouts That Impress. I am recording this introduction because we had a little bit of audio trouble with Jessica, so we lost her intro. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you a little bit about her, and then we will dive into her amazing insight on how she creates her gorgeous design. So Jessica is a sports dietitian, and she believes really that you shouldn't need a PhD in design to create things that look good. And an interesting nugget she shared is that initially she actually did a semester in graphic design, but ended up, becoming, a nutrition major, a registered dietitian. So her passion for creating, for her creative side was definitely there from early on. So she currently um, sees, clients one-to-one, and she shared that she just accepted a new position as the basketball performance dietitian at UCLA. So big props to Jessica, and we wish her well. So we're going to switch over and pick up with the audio where we started grabbing that.
Again, a lot going on. A lot of information, but
I can see the infographic coming through quite a lot when you were mentioning that was something, I guess, an interesting question. So much of what we see as we, I'm not going to say the nutrition care manual, but is very, text heavy, makes very little use of like infographics. Right. I'm curious as to kind of your thoughts on that, of why do you think your resources have so many of those pictorial type approach?
I think it gives the eyes different places to look and different things to highlight. So a lot of what I do in my current designs is I'll have different kind of text boxes or a tip box or something where I'm separating different bits of information a little bit. I think, like, for me, I've always struggled reading textbooks. I don't know if it's like the ADHD in me, because I do definitely have that. But I struggle reading just text, like big blocks of text. So I think having some graphics that make it stand out, having some separation of ideas, where if you have a busy brain, you can kind of jump around and get the concepts. I think that helps me. And it also helps me, even just making it helps me to kind of visually store it in my brain for information for later. A lot of times the resources that I'm making are things that I need in my practice, or it's something I'm reading or learning that I feel like others maybe don't know about, or I want to now like communicate it. And so I'm creating those things out of a gap that I'm seeing or an interest of mine, but more so just really wanting to get that message communicated in a way that will stick for people, in a way that maybe more visual people will pick up on it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point about, written word versus, a picture that demonstrates. There's a lot of value there. So
sure.
I love these examples. So keeping along, we can continue to look at those examples, but we can maybe go back to them. But how do you kind of decide on, what you're going to create? And I think we kind of, sometimes I hear from people who have two camps, people who maybe have too many ideas, but I actually feel that most people fall into the just don't really know what to start with. So how has that process been for you?
Sure. So I will say, like, my creative process is chaotic, and I've been working on ways to kind of at least make the design process a little bit more of a system. But a lot of times I'm getting ideas in the shower. I'm getting ideas when I'm going to bed. I'm reading something. I'm studying right now for my CSSD exam. And so I'm reading things in the textbook and I'm like, oh, I didn't really know this, or I like the way this was said, or I'll listen to a podcast, or, you get just ideas. I feel like people are probably getting ideas all day long and they're not necessarily recognizing those. It can be a conversation I'm having with a client and something that they pointed out. I think a lot of times we get tunnel vision as dietitians because, like, for instance, my social media, it's like largely dietitians. So I'm seeing their messages. Sometimes I want to see, like, what's outside? What are those messages that my clients and the end users are getting? And how do I kind of maybe not talk about what I want to talk about, but what they're interested in and what they want to hear? But a lot of times I'm jotting down ideas on notes on my phone whenever I get a chance, the best stuff done. But yeah, it's really whenever you're having ideas, things that come up in client conversations, that come up in any kind of conversation, write those ideas down. A lot of my earlier work, I feel like I was trying to put a lot of information on paper versus now I'm trying to simplify and say less, but say it in an impactful way where you can, really drill in on those simple concepts.
No, I think that's really, a ton of wise words in there, because it's easy to feel, either criticize ourselves for having a messy design process, or it feels messy, but that's a lot of how, your ideas are going to start, right?
Sure.
So what do you think, I guess, talking a little bit more this idea phase versus creation, where you're got a lot versus, okay, now I've selected something specific. Do you get stuck there? I think a lot of people maybe have a general idea, but it's kind of getting, a fleshed out version.
Sure. So I usually start pen to paper. Usually if I'm creating a handout or something and I have an idea, I pen to paper first. I'm writing down key points, writing down things that I want to say. And that's not all necessarily going to go into my handout, but it at least it's allowing me to stay in that space where I'm thinking, I'm looking at how it looks on paper. I'm looking at, okay, is this too much? Am I trying to fit too much on there? Is this 2 handouts I need to make instead of 1 sort of thing? So pen to paper first. And then I start really looking for designs online that are, or things that people have already done, or templates within Canva that already kind of have that feel of maybe how that information would look well on actual paper. So I save a lot. I save a lot of things and favorite a lot of things on Instagram. I take screenshots of advertisements that I see, things that look visually aesthetically pleasing. I save those for later. Things that catch my eye, I save, because if they caught my eye, then they might catch someone else's eye. And I think I don't know who says it, but someone said if people aren't copying you, that's when you should be concerned. When people are copying your designs, it means you're doing something. Be concerned when people stop copying you. So I think a lot of times we don't need to reinvent the wheel. You can borrow designs and ideas from other places. Doesn't have to be nutrition related, and incorporate it into what you're doing. So
and I think it's that element of I don't want to copy somebody else, but if you're screening, going through Pinterest or something, and you look for a tip sheet or a recipe guide or something, and you see a visual, maybe there's a shaded bar and a call out box and maybe a little, a diagram or something, you could see your own content in those areas. So it's not, I think people get a little bit caught up in the idea of copying somebody else. You're being inspired by an existing design. It's not copying somebody else's work. That's not actually copyrightable.
No, exactly.
So
yeah, that's a great place to start too. I think once we get out of that mindset of I have to do something completely new and different, and just look at things that are already working and make it your own.
Absolutely. I think that's just so absolutely wise there. So I'm going to hit pause for just a second, because I closed up a couple of things over here, and I just want a quick chance. So just hold tight for 2 seconds, okay? All right. So as we were kind of going over the most, the challenging going from idea into kind of that creation mode of having it come together and using other people's inspiration for ideas. So thank you. While I went ahead and kind of got that, live stream restarted again. So I think we fixed the audio issue, and I'll combine these two into one. So let's kind of talk about those design elements. What do you think are the most important factors for a handout to really, I guess, stand head and shoulders above something else that's out there, or at least just look good enough that you would be willing to sell it. So maybe we'll start with the first part and then we'll talk about, you know, that confidence element.
Sure. So, like I said from my earlier designs, very busy. So I feel like nowadays we've got so much information overload that a simple design and something that utilizes a lot of white space and is clean image, if you're using graphics or using pictures, using them in a way that it's aesthetically pleasing, but not in your face, not overtaking the information on there. I use a lot of between like fonts, and I try to stick to like two simple fonts or two fonts that work nicely together so that we're not, you know, I think some people will use really busy fonts or that are difficult to read. So I'm always thinking about readability.
Do you want to switch over and kind of show us an example?
Sure.
Go back to that busy one you were talking about, and then maybe one of your designs that's more recent, and kind of compare those two just from a, you know, element of.
So I would say like, okay, like this one that I did on the dash side, I think I sell it on RD2RD Marketplace. I feel like this one to me is very busy. It's saying it's trying to do a lot.
Now my screen share is not coming through. There's just some little gremlin out there that just, you know, doesn't want anything to work. So why don't you kick off a screen share and we'll see if you'll come back to me.
Can you see it now?
No, I don't even see you. Oh, okay. Okay. Hello.
What if I
my
do my whole
goodness.
desktop? Can you see it if I do my whole desktop?
No, it's just like we switched, and then this is just, why is that happening today? I always go out and look to see if anybody is having like strange issues.
Yeah.
Super random. Isn't that random?
That is crazy.
That's just wild.
Doesn't like to play nice.
It's not playing nice today. I don't know.
This one?
I have no idea.
No.
It's just so wild. All right, I'm gonna go over here real quick just to make sure I'm seeing. I just feel like it's, you know, between the tree that's being chopped down outside my door and everything else today, you're like, okay, what is happening today?
Par for the course.
There's par for the course. Okay, hold on. Yeah, like what I see here on Facebook. It's like not, it's just a screen there.
So I'm not sharing currently. I can go back and try again. Let's see. How about now?
Right. I'm gonna go back to recording on Zoom.
Sure.
All right. So as we were kind of going over the most, you know, the challenging going from idea into kind of that creation mode of having it come together and using other people's inspiration for ideas. So thank you while I went ahead and kind of got that, you know, live stream restarted again. So I think we fixed the audio issue, and I'll combine these two into one. So let's kind of talk about those design elements.
Sure.
What do you think are the most important factors for a handout to really, I guess, stand head and shoulders above something else that's out there, or at least just look good enough that you would be willing to sell it? So maybe we'll start with the first part, and then we'll talk about, you know, that confidence element.
Sure. So, like I said from my earlier designs, very busy. So I feel like nowadays we've got so much information overload that a simple design and something that utilizes a lot of white space and is clean image, if you're using graphics or using pictures, using them in a way that it's aesthetically pleasing, but not in your face, not overtaking the information on there. I use a lot of between like fonts, and I try to stick to like two simple fonts or two fonts that work nicely together so that we're not, you know, I think some people will use really busy fonts or that are difficult to read. So I'm always thinking about readability.
Do you want to switch over and kind of show us an example?
Sure.
Go back to that busy one you were talking about, and then maybe one of your designs that's more recent, and kind of compare those two just from a, you know, element.
Sure. So I would say like, okay, like this one that I did on the dash side, I think I sell it on RD2RD Marketplace. I feel like this one to me is very busy. It's saying it's trying to do a lot. What I like
screen share is not coming through. There's just some little gremlin out there that just, doesn't want anything to work. So why don't you kick off a screen share and we'll see if you'll come back.
And we're back.
And you're back. Thanks for coming back on.
Yeah, no worries. It was like taking forever to connect. Sorry.
That's okay. That's I think Zoom and Facebook are having
a little feud there.
Yeah, so I'm gonna avoid the screenshot, unfortunately, having you share your screen, because it appears that as soon as you press share your screen, I'm gonna have to do some troubleshooting on that.
Okay.
There's probably something out there if I Google it, and there's probably someone who's found a solution.
No worries.
Right. So tell us a little bit about. So designing education that looks nice is different than designing something that actually works for our clients and helps them to understand. And having, an inside look at thousands of products on RD2RD, I'm always impressed by how creative dietitians are and how unlike the resources that I see are what I was given when I was my internship or working in clinical, that they're kind of this really interesting hybrid sometimes of worksheets with reflections, with content, with practicing. I think the ability to create your own resources has kind of opened up what is a nutrition resource. So I'm kind of curious to hear you talk a little bit about what that means to you.
Sure. So, I create a bunch of different things. So I do a lot of like social media graphics, and I do these handouts and other things, both for other dietitians to use in their practice, and then also for our in clients to use. I think when I'm designing something for like a client, a patient education sort of thing, I'm thinking of simplicity. So I'm thinking of 6th grade reading level or below in all of those patient education materials, and also trying to keep what that particular handout is talking about very specific, and not trying to like do it all in one handout. Just like in practice, when if you're seeing patients and or if you're seeing clients and you're seeing them like multiple visits, you don't talk to them about everything in one session. You don't send them away with all that they need to know in one session. You build. And so a lot of my handouts are intended when I'm using them in my practice to build. But they really help me to be able to continue to have that conversation and make sure that my client understands what I'm trying to have them do, right? Because I can reiterate whatever I'm saying with a follow-up message and say like, hey, remember how we talked about balanced snacks? Here's a sheet, here's some references if you're confused and if you need some more ideas on what it is that you're doing. So that sort of answer the question of kind of like the concept behind what I'm trying to do?
Super helpful. I think that makes a ton of sense to me. So thank you for kind of throwing your ideas out there. I think that idea of simplicity, that we know a lot, but really where the magic happens is when we can simplify things down into maybe one small concept, one digestible nugget that people can walk away with, rather than sharing everything we know on a topic.
Right.
So talk about Canva. So I think there's schools of thought on, I personally think Canva, when it went from 1.0 to 2.0, became a platform where you could really design nutrition education resources. I think before then it was a little bit clunky for text and visuals. It was more of a social media graphic. But I'm curious to find out your experience on using Canva for creating handouts and other things that you might have tried or know.
So I use Canva for everything, whether it is, like you said, social media graphics, whether it is PowerPoint presentations, they have beautiful presentations that I use. And then handouts. I build everything. Canva is up on my computer all day, every day, and I'm using it all day, every day to either create something new, revamp something old, or modify something for a particular client to simplify it. Because it is, once you've got some core templates and designs that you like, it's really easy to just continue to build that. So that's what I really try to do in my practice, is try to find a standardized design, some colors that were my brand colors, some fonts that are like my brand fonts, and just kind of a general look and feel that worked. And that way I can reproduce based on the content that I'm putting in it, and I'm not having to put a lot of effort into that whole design piece again. So Canva, there's just so many different tools that you can use within there, and I think that they've added some new tools here recently even, and they're all wonderful. So you know, I do use some other things outside of Canva that I help to port in, whether it's images that I want to edit or something like that. But for the most part, like, Canva's it. You can do so much with it. You can start with a template that's already built. There's so many. There's tons and tons and tons of options, and really start to create something that works for you, for your brand, and for the educational materials that you're trying to create.
Yeah, no, I think you made a good point about the templates, and I'm a Canva Pro user, and I don't often log into my free version and just make sure the functionality, there is some difference. I think if you're getting serious about creating handouts, I'm just curious if you use the paid version or the free version of Canva.
I use the paid version all the way. I think it's like $12. It's totally worth it. It pays for itself especially with selling materials, it pays for itself. And it does, you get, I don't really know how much of the features are lacking, but even just the ability to use the images, they have got some really high quality images. So if you used to have to go buy stock images and license those, like, you don't have to do that. Like, just, you pay the subscription for Canva, and then you get to use these beautiful images. The graphics, so I do a lot more cartoon kind of graphics on my social media graphics, but I do a lot more real images and real products on my handouts. So I think that it's got a really great bank of both of those sorts of things, as well as the ability to import your own images and change things as well. So I use a lot of the features that are already in the Canva, and then just use a couple other external things. You can upload your own fonts too. So if there's fonts that aren't in Canva, you can upload those. So if you have like a logo image that you want to use the same fonts from the logo that you've had designed or something like that, you can upload those into your brand kit. And that way you can stick with those same fonts as well. So that's a helpful feature as well.
I'm curious what your thoughts are on kind of trends you're seeing in resources, education, nutrition resource education, anything that you think dietitians should really be kind of paying attention to right now?
So I would say, like, a lot of the things that I've seen that stand out to me on social media, and then stand out to me on some of the handouts that I see, are like real examples. So like, if you're recommending products or food or things, having real images and real examples on that piece of paper, I think that's so helpful then for a client, because we can tell somebody go get some whole wheat pasta. But if we put like a picture of the brands and things that we're trying to get them to look for, I think that helps. Side-by-side comparisons, those are things that I see a lot of, like, on social media. Not sure if I see them like on handout sort of things, but they definitely could be like, if you're trying to create things like stall stories, what stall stories are, those sorts of things. Those work really well there. Really, I think the things that I see that do well, and the things that I look for, are resources that solve a problem. So whether if it's like a tool that I need in my practice that I don't have, that would like streamline a process, those are things that are doing well. In things that I'm making currently, a lot of what I'm making for other dietitians to use as tools versus like client education, those are selling better for me. So that's something to think about, as I think probably not just tools for your end user, but tools that your peers in the field might benefit from too.
Yeah, no, super, super good advice. And I think talking about the experience of, I guess, creating resources to sell, did you ever have that feeling of, well, I'm not sure if it's good enough, that anxiety? We're putting yourself out there. It's really scary. It's exciting when someone buys your resource, but it's also, well, what if they don't like it? What if they leave a horrible review? What if it's not as good as I think it is? I hear those fears from people. So I'm curious, now, as this is a normal thing for you, what were those real feels that you had going in?
Sure. So then when I was initially using RD2RD Marketplace, I think I had a lot of resources. And I'm like, I'm going to throw some stuff up and see if it sells. And I look back now, and when I see those older resources sell, I'm like, are those even good? You know, are those even are those even worth the price? But I'm selling them at such a low price that I'm like, I think that you're going to get something beneficial out of it. Even if it's just an idea for you to use for something else that you build. Because I do that a lot too. I'll start with a resource that's already available, and I'll look at it and be like, okay, what do I want to improve on this? Like, what do I think would make it better? And then I might make something, not replicating it, but something kind of with a different idea. But yeah, I think we all get into that like imposter syndrome thing. I feel like it all the time. I feel like in everything that I do, like, was that good enough? Did I help that person? Was anything I said impactful? Truth be told, like, it's a learning experience. So if people aren't buying, then it's okay. Why aren't people buying? Perhaps the tool's not ideal, or perhaps it's just how you're marketing the tool. Perhaps it's like the big thing I think you touched on the other day was like, if your presentation or your cover image or your sell image isn't on point, if it doesn't really show people what they're buying, they're less likely to buy, versus if you can have like a preview image of some sort to give people an idea of like, what does this look like? What am I buying? To make sure that it matches, what they're expecting. I think that if you give people a preview, they're less likely to leave a bad review because you already showed them what they're going to get.
Yep.
Yeah.
You mentioned, the importance of solving a problem. And so often, I see that people are very, this is a cardiac handout, or this talks about snacks for athletes or something, where that's in solving a very general problem, but getting more specific. Well, which types of athletes are these ones who want to buy things that they don't have to prepare, or someone who, getting more specific, or what are the complaints that clinician is going to be hearing in their sessions, or you needing to give community presentations, really framing your resource in what am I hearing, or how could I use this resource? People who include some stories about their own use of the resource, or give multiple real world use cases of their product, do far and away better than someone who just, very like, this is a resource, it has X, Y, or Z in it.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting, and that's definitely something I probably need to improve on in myself and how I market. I try to like list out things my item might cover or address, so that people can kind of look and like, because that's what I'm doing when I'm looking for a resource. I try to get in the mindset of like, what am I looking for when I'm going to buy something? And I'm scanning to see like, is it hitting the particular problem that I'm looking for? Because again, like, yeah, someone's selling, I'm in sports, so someone's selling a sports nutrition handout. Cool, but what is it? Like, what is it going to help me? What is it specifically targeting? What kind of an athlete is it for? Like you said, being very specific of what does this solve? Who is this for? Really helps too for people looking for products.
Absolutely. If you're telling them, how it could be used at a team talk versus an individual client session versus in a webinar as a visual you show, people can start to see the value of how they could use that in multiple ways. People's imagination is often, not as good as yours about how your resource could be used. Okay. What surprised you, I guess, about selling, or what do you wish you would have known before that you haven't already kind of shared with us?
That's a good question. What surprised me about selling? Well, I've been delighted to see that so many dietitians are like actually want to pay for for things that other dietitians, and specifically me, that make. But it's wonderful to see that idea exchange that's happening like on RD2RD Marketplace. I also sell products through my own website too, and I think it's really encouraging once you start getting those initial sales of like, oh, people are actually interested in this, but really trying to start refining your process of, okay, like what things are actually selling. A lot of times I get into this kind of like pigeonhole where I'm creating things that are interesting to me, but I have to think of my end user and who's my customer, right? Like I said earlier, my social media following is it's changing now. I've been making these like TikTok videos, and I've got some interesting new followers. But but initially
You're
it was
so brave. You're so brave.
fun. There's a lot of dietitian followers, so I'm selling things to like I'm trying to advertise things for athletes, but the people that were interested in buying from me were actually other dietitians. So I became aware of that, and so I've started putting a lot more effort into creating tools for dietitians as opposed to my end customer. You have to sell to the people that are buying versus and sell the products that people are wanting to buy and needing versus like what you know adding to things that are already out there, already available.
Absolutely. So I think, as we're kind of getting towards the end of our time, I want to, I guess any nuggets of wisdom around if we loop back into the whole design elements. I feel for people who are just thinking, okay, Jessica, you told us that, those of you who could hear, told us that you did some graphic, you did a semester of some graphic design like this, but you're good at design and I'm not. So I just, this isn't something that I think I can do. Any kind of nuggets, words of wisdom to go from kind of where you are to making things that look nice?
You absolutely can. Like if you've gotten this far and you've gone through all that organic chemistry and all these other challenging things, like yes, we're like science brains and we aren't necessarily design brains, but you can absolutely create these things. You can absolutely create these things. Start with things that are already made. Start with templates that already look nice and already look like what you're trying to create, and start there. And then as you don't try to like start with a blank canvas on Canva and try to throw things in and match things up. There's already designers that have created the designs for you, and all you have to do is plug and play.
Yes, you're thinking about doing a design bank, starting to, as you scroll, if you're scrolling through Facebook and you see an ad and there's a visual on there that looks nice, you think, oh, I could use that as my selling image, later on. Like, stop, snap a picture of it, put it on a Pinterest board or save it on somewhere where you can go back to it. And when you need to create something, you have 6 or 7 of them and you're not starting from scratch per se. You may have to recreate it in Canva, like add the elements again.
Sure.
But don't stare at a blank design canvas and try to be a designer, because there's already so many like shortcuts that are available.
Exactly.
I love that.
Exactly.
Such a good tip. Like you can do
sorry, I think.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Some of the other like tools that I like on Canva. So one of my pet peeve of mine is seeing a lot of different kinds of graphics that don't really match each other on a handout. Like if you were using clip art and we're using a lot of like images that they just don't really have the same look and feel. That's something that's like ugh to me. In Canva, if you are using like an element, which is like the clip art kind of graphics, you can click on the little 3 dots and then search for more by that particular brand, that particular designer. So you can find that designer's name and then add in your keywords behind it so that you're adding graphics that have a similar look and feel to them. That's one thing that like I think I see out there that people could improve on. I also don't like matching together like real images and cartoons. I think that those kind of clash on a design together. So that's one thing I would stay away from. I talked about white space, but also spacing and alignment. That's a big thing for me that I see on designs. You have that like line height and letter spacing option where you can shrink or expand things so that you can create like a block of like a flushed out, what am I trying to say? Like something that's aligned nicely. I see a lot of like center lines and then right justified, and we've got hanging words all over the place. Like even just the visual of your words and your big text boxes, clean those up. Make sure that those just look kind of nice, and play with those settings so that whether you're playing with that line height or that letter adjustment, don't be afraid of white space. Like we said, white space is okay. You don't have to fill in every single thing. We don't have to put big chunky boxes all over the entire page. Let's see, what other things would I say? Color palette, limit your colors to, pick a few colors that you like and maybe stick with those. You don't have to have necessarily for the same for all your handouts. I personally do because it makes it easy to just have brand colors that I stick to. So I already know kind of what it's going to look like. Yeah, I think those are big ones. I love the background remover tool on Canva.
Yeah,
I think that's
the pro version. I'm not sure. Maybe I use it.
I'm not sure. I think it might be a pro version. So worth it. So worth it. Whether it's for something you're creating on social media or whether you're taking, like I'll find food images in Canva that I want to put on a design, but I don't want the background or I don't want the white because I'm putting it on color. You can use the background remover even on the images that are in Canva to make that look cleaner too. So those are all like these really cool tools that are already built in that help you, even if you're not a designer, just kind of start to create something that can be really aesthetically pleasing.
Absolutely. Love your tips. How can people connect with you, learn more about what you're doing? Because you mentioned that you do some work for other dietitians as well. They're like, Jessica, can you help me? Talk to us about how people can connect with you.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram at Jessica the Sports RD. Same email address, jessicathesportsrd@gmail.com as well, and then website jessicathesportsrd.com. So really either one of those ways, I'm pretty accessible and always willing to help out, whether it's tips or helping other dietitians develop their own content. I'm always happy to do that.
I'm so bummed that I couldn't let you do some more screen sharing because Jessica makes just absolutely stunning resources. So hopefully I can do some Googling and figure out what my fellow warriors that use these three platforms together have to share with me on this little
Good luck to you.
Little gremlin that decided to talk about this time. So thank you again for being here in our November RD2RD Live Show. We're going to have Stacy from nutritionjobs.com on. She's going to talk about resume refresh and really looking at what's happening in the virtual world and how do we take some of our skills and make sure that we're really portraying them on our resume and putting ourselves out there that we're versatile and as the demands might be different. So just as people are job hunting, help land jobs. So congratulations to you for landing a new job. So awesome to hear. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for sticking with this very difficult technology. I appreciate you made it very painless for me, and you just rolled with it. So thank you.
Oh.
Right.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate everything about it.